Canada is fighting back against U.S. President Trump's tariffs on imported vehicles.
We will defend our workers. We'll defend our companies. We'll defend our country. And we'll defend it together.
That's Liberal leader Mark Carney acting as Prime Minister, putting 25% retaliatory tariffs on all U.S. vehicle imports in response to Trump's latest levies on Canadian cars. Now, the counter tariffs are going to affect American cars not compliant with CUSMA, but Mexican-made cars and auto parts will be left out. So for more on how the auto industry is reacting, I'm joined this morning by Brian Kingston, President and CEO of the Canadian Vehicle Manufacturers Association. Good morning.
Good morning.
Before we get to how and who this applies to, I want to ask you about people in the industry. It has been a tumultuous couple of days for the auto sector. First, the kicking in of the tariffs. Now the announcement of counter tariffs. How are those directly affected? I'm talking manufacturers, sellers, and workers feeling being caught in the middle of all of this.
Well, it's been an extremely stressful few weeks. There was a hope that we would avoid these tariffs and that the Americans would come to appreciate how integrated our industry is, but they've gone ahead. And so we are now facing a 25% tariff on Canadian-built vehicles. Fortunately, we do have a lot of U.S. content in the vehicles we build here, so the tariff won't be as high as 25%. But this is very damaging to an industry that is highly, highly integrated across North America. So deep concern, but I remain hopeful we can find a path forward.
It's that integration. I'm hoping you can give some clarity. So for those of us who are not in the industry, it can be hard for people to keep track of Canadian versus American-made cars, given that we've learned that these vehicles are really an amalgamation of parts from both countries. Some vehicles up to 50% of American parts. So how is it determined a foreign car versus a Canadian car, and vice versa on the other side of the border?
Yeah, well, you know, the way I like to think about it is there really isn't anything considered a Canadian car or a U.S. car. It's a North American vehicle because we have so many parts and components that cross the border, and, you know, anywhere from 4 to 8 times a part could go back and forth before it is installed into a finished vehicle. So companies do track where all of those inputs come from, but a Canadian-built vehicle will have so much U.S. content in it that you could say it's a jointly built vehicle because it is so highly integrated. So that's how the industry works, and that's why it's so difficult at this stage after 60 years of working together to try and pull that supply chain apart.
And when President Trump speaks about foreign-made vehicles, he's referring to what specifically?
Effectively anything not built in the United States. That seems to be the definition that he is using, and he has applied a 25% tariff to any vehicle that is not built in the USA.
Okay, we're talking vehicles whole, but a lot of people have trouble differentiating between the cars and the car parts. And part of Ottawa's retaliation is exempting tariffs on auto parts. Why is that beneficial?
Well, what Ottawa is trying to do is make sure that they do not put in place a retaliatory tariff that has the unintended consequence of damaging the manufacturers that build right here in Canada. So there will be a remission program that the Prime Minister announced, which will effectively allow a company to import vehicles from the United States on the basis of the fact that they have a footprint here, they employ Canadians, and the tariff will be applied only to the U.S. components in a vehicle. So it's a rather complicated structure, but we're encouraged by it because the last thing we want to do is damage manufacturers who are already under fire from the U.S. Yeah. If we then hurt the vehicles that they sell in Canada, it will be doubly damaging. We've got to support them. We've got to keep the footprint in this country.
I'm wondering if I can get your response, and this is from the auto parts industry this week, where they were talking about the reality is if a company, an auto parts company, has to pay the tariffs up front on the back and forth, that eventually they are going to run out of cash flow for that. And that is going to have a trickle-down effect, and that means production of vehicles stops because there's just not enough cash to pay the tariffs back and forth before the vehicle's made, then sold, and then the profits come. Do you see that effect as well?
Yeah, I believe they are correct. I mean, we put out some economic analysis last week before this all came forward and show that what will happen if you drive tariffs through the supply chain. This is a tax. So taxes will go up. Everybody, including auto parts suppliers, are going to see bigger costs. This industry does not have significant margins. You cannot continue to operate with a 25% tax throughout your supply chain. So prices are going to go up for consumers between $4,700 US and $10,000 for a vehicle. Demand is going to go down and production will decline. That's where this takes us.
Yeah, Liberal leader Mark Carney has, as we know, promised a $2 billion relief package. He says the proceeds from these auto tariffs are going to go directly to the industry and its workers. How will that work, and how much is going to the companies versus the employees?
We don't have the details yet on the breakdown of exactly how that will be distributed. And to be clear, our objective here is really to ensure that we can find a way to continue to trade with the U.S. If we cannot access the U.S. market, where 90% of the vehicles Canada builds go to, there is no support program that will keep this industry moving forward. We have to find a way to trade with the United States. It is the foundation of this sector, going right back to the auto pact. So that is priority number one. But then, of course, it is going to be a bumpy road for the next few weeks. So having supports for anybody who is employed in the sector throughout the supply chain, making sure that they're taken care of, will be critically important.
Brian Kingston, President and CEO of the Canadian Vehicle Manufacturers Association, thank you for your time, and we appreciate your insight this morning.
Thank you.
If you like that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.